Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seven Continents, One Story.
Hi there. So glad you're joining us today.
Hey everyone, great to have you here.
I'm Niels, professor of history from Sweden.
I'm Celine, joining you from Edinburgh, Scotland.
And I'm Ethan, calling in from Malta.
Together, we explore incredible stories from history across all 7 continents.
Every episode brings you a new journey through time.
From ancient civilizations to modern moments that changed everything.
So let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 7 Continents, One Story.
Hey, so good to be here again. How are you both doing?
I'm great, really excited about today's episode. This one is going to be amazing.
Wonderful. I can feel this is going to be a special journey. Today, we're traveling all the way to Africa.
Africa. I do love African history. So many incredible civilizations we don't hear enough about.
Yes, and I've been learning more about connections between African and Asian trade routes. This should be fascinating.
Perfect. Then let's dive in.
Nils, you've got that look again. The look that means you've brought something special.
Celine, you know me too well.
Oh, is this one of your artifact replicas? It's always incredible when you bring something from your collection.
Even better, Ethan. This one represents something that most people have never heard of, but it changed the world in ways few understand.
Go on. I'm listening.
I have a coin here, but this is not just any coin. This is a window into a kingdom that most of your history teachers probably never mentioned.
A coin that changed the world? That's so cool.
Let me describe it to you. It's made of gold, remarkably pure gold. On one side, you see a human face and profile. The styling is unmistakably classical. Greek inscriptions surround the portrait.
Greek inscriptions? But you said this is African.
Exactly. This is the puzzle. On the reverse side, you see a representation of a throne or a symbolic crown, more Greek imagery.
But where is this from? Which African kingdom?
The kingdom that minted this coin was located in what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea. But here's what makes this remarkable. This coin was not primarily meant for local use.
What do you mean?
This coin was part of an international trade network. It was used with traders from Egypt, from Arabia, from India, and even from far-off Rome. This single coin is evidence of a kingdom so powerful, so strategically positioned, that it controlled the flow of goods between continents.
That's so cool, but what was this kingdom called?
We're going to answer that question. But first, let me take you there. The year is 100 CE. You're standing on an elevated plateau in northeastern Africa. The landscape around you is dry, but not desert. Terraced hills, agricultural lands. In the distance, you can see the Red Sea sparkling in the sunlight.
Can you feel the heat?
Oh, you can feel it. It's intense, dry heat. But there's a breeze coming from the sea. You can smell it. Salt water mixing with dust. Around you, people are working. Some are farming. Some are trading. The language you hear sounds unfamiliar. Not quite Arabic. Not quite anything else you'd recognize.
Are there cities?
Yes, and you're standing on the edge of one now. Before you, laid out across the landscape, is the city of Aksum, the capital of a kingdom that, in this very moment, is beginning its rise to power. In a few short decades, emperors in Rome will recognize this kingdom as a force to be reckoned with. By the next century, a Persian prophet will identify this kingdom as one of the 4 greatest powers on earth.
A kingdom that powerful? And we've never heard of it?
Exactly. History has forgotten this incredible civilization, but today we remember. Today, we tell the story of the Aksumite Empire.
Tell us everything.
To understand the rise of Aksum in 100 CE, we need to step back, way back. We need to understand where this kingdom came from.
Where did the Aksumites come from? Were they always in Africa?
That's a great question. The story is complex. The people who would become the Aksumites were not the first civilizations in this region. Before Aksum, there was another kingdom, the Kingdom of Dumt, which some historians spell as Da'amat. This kingdom flourished in what is now northern Eritrea and the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia.
How far back are we talking?
The Kingdom of Dumt existed from roughly 800 BCE to 600 BCE. That's over 2,000 years before our main story begins. This civilization developed something remarkable. They created sophisticated agricultural systems, irrigation, the plow. They worked with iron, making tools and weapons.
So they were advanced?
Very advanced for the time, and they left us evidence. In the Tigray region, there's a place called Yeha. There, you can still see a temple. It was dedicated to the god Al-Maka. But here's what's fascinating. The style of this temple. It's Sabaean. That means the people who built it had strong connections across the Red Sea with the civilization in what is now Yemen.
So there was already trade across the Red Sea?
Exactly, Celine. You're getting the picture. The kingdom of Dant had established trade connections, cultural connections, people moving back and forth. Now, what happened to Dant? That's where history becomes a bit mysterious.
Did Dant just disappear?
No one is entirely certain. Some scholars believe Dant declined gradually. Others think smaller kingdoms unified what remained. What we know from archaeology is that the Aksumite Plateau was occupied long before the formal kingdom of Aksum. Settlement evidence goes back to the late 1st millennium BCE.
So you're saying people were living there before there was an actual kingdom called Aksum?
Precisely. Archaeologists have excavated sites like Beta Georgis and Onanagast. These sites show evidence of Proto-Aksumite communities around 500 BCE. They left behind ceramics, burial mounds, tools, and crucially, they show connections with peoples across the Red Sea and South Arabia.
So these Proto-Aksumite people, they eventually became the Aksumites?
Over centuries, yes. These local communities gradually organized themselves. They moved from scattered settlements to something more centralized, a polity, a kingdom. By around the 4th century BCE, the kingdom of Aksum was emerging, but it wasn't yet the major power we're interested in.
When did it become powerful?
By the 1st century CE, which brings us back to our 100 CE moment. Around 150 BCE to 150 CE, the Aksumite kingdom fully established itself. It started as a confederation, a collection of smaller districts, each with its own local king. But gradually, one king rose above the others. One kingdom became the center. One city, Aksum, became the capital.
So who was in charge? Who was the king?
Here's an interesting question. In 100 CE, Aksum had multiple rulers, or what some scholars call kings of kings. One figure who emerges later, around 200 CE, is a king known as GDRT, sometimes written as Gadara. He's often called the first truly Aksumite king to expand beyond local territories.
What made him different from the others?
That's where our story gets interesting, but we'll come back to him. For now, let's understand why Aksum was positioned to become powerful.
Tell us about the position. Why was Aksum special?
Ethan, you've just asked the most important question about Aksum's rise. Geography, location, position. This is where Aksum's destiny begins.
I'm ready.
Imagine you're standing at the center of an ancient world. To your west, the African interior. To your east, the Red Sea. Across the Red Sea, to the east, is the Arabian Peninsula, and beyond that, Persia. Further south, the Indian Ocean, and to the north, Egypt. To the northwest, the Mediterranean.
So Aksum is in the middle of everything?
Exactly. Aksum controlled access. More specifically, they controlled the Red Sea coast through their primary port city, Adulis. This wasn't just any port. This would become one of the most important trading centers in the ancient world.
But geography alone doesn't make a kingdom powerful. What else happened?
You're absolutely right, Celine. Geography alone wouldn't be enough. But something happened. Something that changed everything. Around 100 BCE, the world's maritime trade patterns shifted. Dramatically.
What do you mean shifted?
For centuries, trade between the Mediterranean and the Far East relied on caravan routes. Merchants would travel overland across deserts through the Persian territories. It was slow. It was dangerous. But around 100 BCE, traders discovered something remarkable, the monsoon winds.
Monsoon winds?
The seasonal winds that blow across the Arabian Sea. Traders realized they could use these winds to sail directly from Egypt, down the Red Sea, and across the Arabian Sea, directly to India. No desert crossing. No long caravan journeys. Just open water and favorable winds.
So the route got shorter?
It got revolutionary. Suddenly, the demand for goods from the Far East exploded. Silks from China, spices from India, jewels from the Far East. Roman demand was insatiable, and the bottleneck for all of this trade was the Red Sea. The kingdom that controlled the Red Sea coast would become fabulously wealthy.
And Aksum controlled the Red Sea coast.
Aksum had Adulis. Adulis became the great redistributing port. Goods coming from the Far East arrived at Adulis. They were transferred to caravans and trading networks. From Adulis, these goods went to Egypt, to the Mediterranean, to Persia. And in return, Aksum collected taxes, customs duties. They became wealthy beyond measure.
So Aksum got rich by controlling the biggest trade route?
Not just rich, powerful, influential. By 100 CE, Aksum was using this wealth to build a real kingdom, not just scattered settlements and local rulers, a unified state, a bureaucracy, an army.
What goods were they exporting? You mentioned it's a port, but what exactly was the Aksumite product?
This is where it gets specific. Aksum didn't manufacture goods for export like modern factories. Instead, Aksum controlled the interior trade networks. They coordinated the extraction and sale of luxury goods from the African interior.
What kind of goods?
Ivory. Extraordinary quantities of ivory. African elephants provided tusks that were carved into luxury items for wealthy Romans and Mediterranean people. Gold extracted from African mines. Frankincense and myrrh. Fragrant resins used in religious rituals, perfumes, medicines, emeralds, tortoise shells, rhinoceros horns, highly valued in Asian medicine, exotic animal skins, even exotic animals themselves, monkeys, giraffes, leopards. These were shipped to Roman zoos and arenas.
That's quite a list.
The first-century Greek document called the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, a kind of ancient trading guide, mentions Aksum specifically. It describes Adulis as a major marketplace for ivory. A Greek trader writing in the 1st century CE recognized Aksum as a power to be recorded and studied.
So traders knew about Aksum?
Merchants from the Mediterranean world knew exactly where Aksum was, what it offered, how important it was to their commerce. And this is 100 CE. Aksum is just beginning. By the next century, its power will expand dramatically. By the 4th century, it will be recognized alongside Rome, Persia, and China as one of the 4 great superpowers of the world. Speaking of trade, let me tell you the second clue about our golden coin. This coin has Greek written all over it. The inscriptions, the portrait style, the design.
But why would an African kingdom mint coins with Greek on them?
Because Greek was the language of trade, the Hellenistic world. After Alexander the Great conquered the known world, Greek became the international language. If you wanted to trade with the Mediterranean world, with Egypt, with anyone, you used Greek. So the Aksumites, being brilliant traders, minted their coins in Greek. It made the coins universally acceptable.
Like how English is used in business today?
Exactly like that, Ethan. Perfect comparison. This coin was minted at a time when Aksum was becoming integrated into the wider world, when Aksumite merchants were traveling to Egypt and beyond.
So the coin is a sign that they were becoming part of the wider Mediterranean world?
Precisely. This is not the coin of an isolated African kingdom. This is the coin of a trading empire that was taking its place among the great powers of the ancient world. Now, let's step forward in time. By the early 3rd century CE, something dramatic happened. Aksum began military expansion.
They went to war.
They did, and not small wars. A king named GDRT, the figure we mentioned earlier, ruled from around 200 to 230 CE. Under his reign, Aksum's military campaigns expanded dramatically.
Where did they expand?
West into Arabia, what we now call Yemen. They conquered territories called Kinadokopita and the lands of the Arabitai, but the most significant expansion was across the Red Sea. Aksum began controlling not just the coastal trade, but also territories in what is now the western coast of Arabia.
So they were empire building?
They were creating an empire. By around 200 CE, the Aksumite sphere of control extended across the Red Sea. They were not just traders anymore, they were military conquerors.
Did this expansion continue?
It's complicated. After GDRT, there was a period where Aksumite power faced setbacks. In fact, around 220 CE, the Aksumites suffered a significant military defeat. At a place called Zafar, the capital of the Himyarite kingdom in Arabia, Aksumite forces were defeated.
They lost?
Yes, they lost, but not permanently. This is where history becomes fascinating. Within a couple of decades, Aksum rebounded. Under later rulers, NGST Adebh and his son GRMT, Aksumite power expanded again. By around 240 CE, Aksum had secured control of vast territories in southern Arabia. Places called As'aran Azuran, Ma'afir Ma'afir, Sawuma Sa'uma, and Saharatan Suharatan.
So they recovered from the defeat and became even stronger?
Exactly. They learned from defeat, they adapted, they returned stronger. This is a pattern that will repeat throughout Aksumite history. They were resilient, adaptable, always strategic. But the real power of Aksum came in the 4th century. This is when Aksum truly became a superpower. A king named Ezana, sometimes called Aizanes, began a military campaign that was even more ambitious than anything before.
What did King Ezana do?
Ezana's campaigns, which occurred around 360 CE, focused on consolidating Aksumite control in the region. Specifically, he campaigned against the Noba Nohbo, sometimes called the Nubians, peoples who lived to the west, in what is now Sudan. These were people who threatened Aksum's western frontier. They had established their own powerful kingdom after the earlier kingdom of Kush had declined.
So Ezana was defending his territory.
More than defending. Expanding. According to inscriptions that were left at the city of Aksum and at Meroe-Meroe in Sudan, Ezana's campaigns achieved significant military victories. He pushed back the Nubian threat. He extended Aksumite influence westward. By the time Ezana finished his campaigns, Aksum was truly the dominant power in northeastern Africa.
Is there anything else special about King Ezana?
Yes, something profound. When earlier Aksumite kings won battles, they attributed their victories to pagan gods, Mars, the sacred sun god, various deities. But King Ezana did something different. He attributed his military victories to the Christian god.
Ezana was Christian?
By around the time of his reign, King Ezana had adopted Christianity. Not secretly, openly, publicly. The inscriptions from his military campaigns make this clear. He was not just a powerful military leader, he was a Christian leader. And what happened next was remarkable. The entire kingdom of Aksum, from the king down through the elites, converted to Christianity.
The whole kingdom converted?
Christianity had been spreading in the Mediterranean world. It had reached Egypt. It had reached Syria. But Aksum's adoption of Christianity was both political and profound. King Ezana made Christianity the official religion of the state. This solidified Aksum's connections to the Christian Mediterranean world, Rome, Egypt, the Christian communities spreading across the Mediterranean.
So Aksum was becoming Christian at the same time the Roman Empire was becoming Christian?
Yes, and this is not a coincidence. By the 4th century, the Roman Empire itself, having embraced Christianity, recognized Aksum as a brother Christian civilization. The Christian emperors of Rome and the Christian kings of Aksum saw themselves as part of the same global order. This placed Aksum on the world stage in a completely new way. Now, let me give you the third and final clue about our coin. Look at the inscriptions more carefully. They're in Greek, yes, but they're not Ptolemaic Greek or any standard Mediterranean Greek you'd expect.
What does that mean?
These are inscriptions specific to Aksum. They identify the king who minted the coin. They proclaim his titles. Sometimes they invoke Christian protection. By the time Aksumite kings were minting coins with Christian inscriptions, the kingdom had fully transformed from a regional trading power to a recognized Christian superpower. This single coin, gold, Greek, bearing the royal insignia, represents an entire transition. From the 1st century CE, when Aksum was rising as a trade hub, to the 4th century when it was recognized as one of the world's great empires.
So this coin is really a marker of Aksum's transformation?
It is. This coin is evidence of a civilization that went from who to what to wow. It is the coin of the Aksumite Empire, the kingdom that 3rd century Persians identified as one of the world's 4 greatest powers, alongside Rome, alongside the Persian Empire, alongside China. Aksum was there on the world stage, a purely African civilization that had learned to trade, to organize, to expand, to survive, to convert, and ultimately to become a superpower. The Aksumite Empire would continue to be a major power for centuries. It would eventually decline around the 7th century when the rise of Islam changed the political landscape of the Red Sea. But for nearly half a millennium, from the 1st century CE through the 6th century CE, Aksum was not a minor regional kingdom. It was a world power.
But almost nobody knows about it.
Almost nobody. And that's what makes this story so important. Our school books talk about Rome. They talk about the Persian Empire. They talk about ancient civilizations in the Mediterranean. But they often skip over Africa, and in skipping over Africa, they skip over Aksum, one of the world's greatest civilizations.
That's why your artifact collection is so important, Niels. These are windows into forgotten histories.
Exactly, Celine. Every artifact, every coin, every fragment of pottery, it's all testimony to human achievement, to ingenuity, to the ability of people to organize, to innovate, to connect with each other across great distances.
What did Aksum look like as a city? What did people do there?
Aksum was a cosmopolitan center, a big city with markets, government buildings, religious temples. In the earliest period, before the Christian conversion, there would have been temples to various gods. The city was laid out in a practical way, designed to handle the intense trade that flowed through it. Warehouses, storage facilities for the goods that came up from the interior or arrived from the sea.
What about the people who lived there?
There were merchants, administrators, priests, skilled craftspeople making pottery, tools, and decorative items. There were porters and laborers moving goods. There were guards protecting the city and the trade routes. There were farmers in the surrounding lands providing food for the urban population. And there were slave laborers, which is an important historical reality we need to acknowledge. The Aksumite economy, like most ancient economies, relied on slavery.
What languages did they speak?
The local language was Ge'ez, an ancient language that is still used in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church today. But for international commerce, they used Greek. For contacts with Arabian and Persian traders, they would have used Arabic and other Middle Eastern languages. Aksum was a multilingual place, a cosmopolitan place.
How did they manage such a large trading network? How did they keep it organized?
The Aksumite kingdom developed an early bureaucracy, government officials, record keepers, inspectors to ensure fair trade and to collect taxes. The kings issued decrees. They minted coins, standardized currency that traders could rely on. They maintained roads connecting major cities. They established way stations where merchants could rest and exchange goods. They used written documents, inscriptions, and contracts. All of this required literacy and administrative skill.
That's sophisticated for ancient times.
It is, and it shows that Aksum was not a simple kingdom. It had the institutional structures of an empire, laws, organization, strategic planning. When historians look at the rise of Aksum, we see evidence of careful, deliberate state building, not just conquest, but organization.
So here's a sponsor message from our partner Cyprus, Real Returns. You know, learning about Aksum reminds me of something important. Ancient empires succeeded because they understood strategic positioning. They didn't gamble on their future. They planned. They invested wisely. And that same thinking matters today. Cyprus, Real Returns operates on that principle. Secure Cyprus real estate investments with guaranteed returns of 6 to 12%, backed completely by the Cyprus Land Registry. Professional management handles everything. The tourism market there thrives with 4 million visitors annually, so the returns are consistent. Just as Aksum planned for their future prosperity, smart investors today plan theirs. Visit CyprusRealReturns.com to see how strategic investing can fund your own adventures exploring history.
Okay, so here's what I'm wrestling with. Aksum had everything going for it, right? Geography, trade, military power, the ability to organize.
All of those things, yes.
But then you said something earlier that intrigued me. You said Aksum eventually declined in the 7th century. So my question is, how does a kingdom that's one of the 4 greatest powers on Earth end up forgotten by history?
That's a really good question.
That's an excellent question, Celine Thane, and the answer involves one of the most significant moments in Aksumite history, a moment where the kingdom had to make a choice. Let me set it up for you. In the 7th century CE, the political landscape of the world changed dramatically. A new religious and political force emerged in the Arabian Peninsula, Islam. Prophet Muhammad established Islam in around 610 CE. Within decades, the Islamic Caliphate had expanded across vast territories, including the Red Sea region.
So Islam was expanding and threatening Aksum.
Threatening is one word. Transforming would be another. By around 640 CE, the early Islamic empires had secured control of much of the Arabian Peninsula. They were also exerting influence in the Red Sea. Now, Aksum had been Christian for about 300 years at this point. The kingdom had strong connections to the Christian Byzantine Empire, what was left of the Eastern Roman Empire.
So there was a religious and political divide forming?
Yes, The Islamic empires on one side, the Christian Byzantine Empire on the other, and Aksum, being Christian, was associated with the Byzantine world. But Aksum was also geographically surrounded. To the west, Islamic forces. To the north, Islamic forces. The kingdom had a choice to make. Imagine you are the king of Aksum in 650 CE. Your kingdom has been Christian for 300 years. You have strong cultural and religious ties to the Byzantine Empire. But the Islamic empires surround you.
Okay, what's the choice?
You can do one of three things. First option, you can resist. You can maintain your Christian ties to Byzantine. You can fight against Islamic expansion. You can remain independent. But this means military conflict, possibly wars you cannot win.
What are the other options?
Second option, you can adapt, you can negotiate, you can establish peaceful relations with the new Islamic empires. You might maintain your faith privately, but publicly acknowledge the authority of the caliphate. This preserves your wealth and your autonomy, but it means shifting your allegiances.
And the third?
Third option, you can retreat. You can turn your attention away from the wider world. You can focus on the interior, on local affairs. You accept that your days as a global power are ending. You become an inward-looking kingdom rather than an outward-looking empire.
So these are the three paths Aksum could have taken?
Essentially, yes. Now, here's my question for you both. Which path would you choose? And more importantly, which path do you think Aksum actually chose?
Okay, so if I was the king, I think I would resist. Keep my independence, keep my Christian faith. Don't let the Islamic empires push me around.
But Ethan, you heard what Nil said. The Islamic forces were all around. How do you fight against that? It sounds like a losing battle.
Yeah, but if you surrender, doesn't that mean everything you believe in gets compromised? Isn't there value in defending what matters to you?
Ethan raises an important point, but Celine's concern is valid too. Here's the historical reality. Aksum did choose to adapt. They negotiated with the Islamic powers. They maintained peaceful relations. They did not engage in full military confrontation.
So they chose option 2?
Partially. It's more complex than that. The kingdom maintained its Christian faith, but it became less of a global power. It withdrew from active competition in the Red Sea trade. It accepted a smaller sphere of influence.
Why did they do that?
Because it was pragmatic. Because the world had changed. Because continuing to fight would have drained the kingdom. But also because of something else. Something Celine actually touched on earlier.
What's that?
Remember when I mentioned earlier that we come back to someone? In the 7th century CE, when these challenges arose, Aksum had several rulers, and one of them made decisions that fundamentally shaped the kingdom's future. But he's not usually the one we remember. His name was King Ar-Mah, sometimes spelled Ar-Mah or Ar-Mah.
Who was King Ar-Mah?
King Ar-Mah ruled during the crucial transition period. This was around 630 to 650 CE, when the Islamic expansion was happening, when Aksum had to decide its future. What makes Ar-Mah remarkable is this. He did something unexpected. He became the first Christian king to accept and even protect Islamic refugees.
Really?
Yes. When Muhammad and the early Muslims were facing persecution in the Arabian Peninsula, some of them fled across the Red Sea. They sought refuge in Aksum, and King Ar-Mah granted them asylum. He protected them. Historical records suggest he even embraced some principles of the new faith, though he remained officially Christian.
So he was trying to keep peace?
Yes. King Ar-Mah understood something profound, that in a changing world, survival sometimes means adaptation, flexibility, the ability to see the other side's perspective. He didn't view Islam as an existential threat to be destroyed. He viewed it as a new reality to be navigated. And by doing so, he preserved Aksum, not as a global superpower, but as an independent Christian kingdom that would survive for centuries.
So King Ar-Mah made the pragmatic choice?
He did, and in doing so, he kept Aksum alive. Many kingdoms faced with similar circumstances were completely conquered or destroyed. Aksum survived. It retreated from its peak of power, yes. But it survived, and that's a kind of victory in itself.
Remember the name, King Ar-Mah.
Yes. Remember King Ar-Mah. Remember his pragmatism. Remember his ability to adapt. Because without his flexibility, without his willingness to find peace in a changing world, the Aksumite Empire would have ended in the 7th century. As it was, it survived another several hundred years. until eventually changing circumstances forced other decisions.
But what happened to Aksum after King Ar-Mah? How long did it continue?
After the transition period that Ar-Mah navigated, Aksum became a regional power rather than a global power. It remained Christian. It maintained its identity. But the great days of international trade and imperial expansion were over. By around the 9th century, the kingdom faced new challenges. Trade routes shifted. The coast became less important. The center of power in the region moved.
So Aksum just ended?
Not exactly ended. It transformed. The people didn't disappear. The culture didn't disappear. What happened is that the kingdom fragmented. Regional power centers emerged. Eventually, a new kingdom called Aksumite would grow from the Central Highlands under the Zagwe dynasty. But that's another story.
So, in a way, Aksum's legacy lived on through its people and culture?
Exactly. The culture survived. The religion survived. The language, Ge'ez, survived and is still used in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church today. This is what I mean about Aksum's lasting impact. Even though its political power declined, even though it's not remembered in most history books, the civilization lived on. And more than that, it helped shape what would become the nation of Ethiopia. The modern nation of Ethiopia is, in many ways, a direct descendant of the Aksumite Empire.
So Ethiopia is basically the legacy of Aksum?
In many ways, yes. The Christian faith, the culture, the pride in independence, the sense of being connected to a great ancient civilization, all of these trace back to Aksum, which is why the Aksumite story matters, not just for historical accuracy, but for understanding the modern world. Let me ask you both something. What do you know about Ethiopia?
Not much, to be honest. I know it's in Africa. I know it has mountains and beautiful landscapes. I think it's Christian.
I know it has a fascinating history. I remember reading that it was one of the only African nations never to be colonized.
Both correct. And both of those facts trace directly back to Aksum. When the European colonial powers were scrambling to colonize African nations in the 19th century, Ethiopia was different. Ethiopia had an ancient written tradition, a formal government, a Christian king, the emperor, with a complex bureaucracy. The European powers didn't see Ethiopia as a place they could simply conquer. They saw it as a nation-state, not a collection of primitive tribes.
Because of Aksum?
Because of Aksum, the memory of Aksum, the legacy of an ancient civilization. The Ethiopian people remembered that their ancestors had been part of a great empire, a world power, and that memory gave them the confidence, the organization, the cultural pride to resist colonization. There's a direct line from the Aksumite Empire through to the modern nation of Ethiopia and its independence.
You mentioned earlier that Aksum had connections with Asia. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. The trade route from the Mediterranean to India and beyond that to China went through the Red Sea, and it went through Aksum. We have archaeological evidence of Aksumite merchants traveling to India. We have evidence of Indian merchants settling in Aksum. There are Indian-style artifacts found in Aksumite archaeological sites. And more than that, there's evidence that Aksum traded indirectly with China.
Aksum traded with China?
Not directly, but through the Indian Ocean networks. Aksumite merchants would sell their goods, ivory, incense, gold, to Indian merchants. The Indian merchants would then trade these goods onward to merchants from China, and in return, Chinese goods, silk especially, would come back through the same networks, eventually reaching Aksum.
So Aksum was connected to the Silk Road?
In a way, yes. Though we usually think of the Silk Road as a land-based route across Central Asia. The ocean-based routes through the Red Sea and Indian Ocean were equally important. Some scholars call these the maritime Silk Roads, and Aksum was a major node on these networks. The fact that we're finding Chinese pottery and Aksumite archaeological sites proves this connection.
That's amazing. So Aksum was truly global.
It was. It was a crossroads of civilizations. African, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, Asian. All these worlds met at Aksum, through its ports, through its markets, through the people who lived there.
And that's what makes it so important to remember.
Exactly. Aksum reminds us that our world has always been connected. For thousands of years, people have been moving goods, ideas, and cultures across vast distances. Aksum was part of that story, a crucial part, and yet we've largely forgotten it, which is why projects like Artifact Collection, like historical research, like this podcast, matter so much.
We're keeping the memory alive.
We are, and by doing so, We're giving credit where it's due, to the Aksumite people, to the traders who risked their lives on long journeys, to the kings and administrators who organized complex systems, to the ordinary people who built this civilization. They deserve to be remembered, and today, we remember them.
What an incredible story.
It is, and it's just one chapter in the vast story of human history. There are so many other civilizations, so many other empires, so many other stories we haven't told yet. But today was Aksum's day.
So before we wrap up, one more sponsor message from Cyprus Real Returns. Honestly, thinking about how Aksum built lasting wealth through strategic partnerships and smart positioning makes you realize something important. The empires that lasted weren't the ones that gambled. They were the ones that planned carefully. That's what I appreciate about Cyprus Real Returns. They take that same strategic approach to modern investing. Cyprus. Real estate with guaranteed 6 to 12% returns, fully secured through the Cyprus Land Registry, professionally managed, no guessing. No gambling, just smart, consistent returns. And with Cyprus tourism at 4 million visitors annually and property values up nearly 8% yearly, it's a solid opportunity. Visit cyprusrealreturns.com to explore how strategic investing can build your future, just like Aksum built theirs. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time on 7 Continents, One Story.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
This has been a special episode.
Until next time, keep exploring history.